Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habati fillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all with all the things that please Him, tabarak wa ta'ala. Bless us with ikhlas, with thabat. Bless us with the servitude and obedience to Him, tabarak wa ta'ala alone. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to be of His righteous servants and forgive us of our many sins and help us to go forward in pleasing Him and not just following our own desires and the things that we want to do. Ahabati fillah, we left off in our study of advice to Ahl Sunnah. We left off at the fourth point where the Sheikh said, it is extremely important, especially for the students of knowledge who are involved in giving da'wah, that they make a distinction between mudarat and mudahana. The former, meaning mudarat, pertains to leniency and gentleness in your approach towards people, which is highly recommended in the Shar'. And it was mentioned in Lisan al-Arab, which is a very famous dictionary, Arabic language dictionary, about the term mudarat. Looking for my miswak, I misplaced it. Alhamdulillah. So in Lisan al-Arab, mudarat means to be lenient, friendly with people, to keep them from feeling uncomfortable and running away from you. This is an important trait of the da'i. And many people get the two terms mixed up because mudarat does not mean to compromise your deen, whereas mudahana means to compromise your faith in order to get people to like you or to come around or to accept what you have. Maybe you compromise give up some of your principles and accept some of their principles in order to make people happy. But in fact, they're very distinguished from one another. One is madhmoom, meaning sinful, and one is mamdur, it is praiseworthy. So it's praiseworthy to have mudarat, to be lenient and friendly with people and giving da'wah, because you want people to accept your da'wah. And mudahana, which is the compromise, is criticized and contemptible due to the fact that it is specifically related to the religion. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they wish that you would compromise your religion out of sympathy for them so they too could compromise their religion with you. So this shows us that the mushrikeen, they wanted the Prophet ﷺ to compromise his da'wah to Tawheed and accept and worship some of their gods sometimes, and then they would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on other days. This is what they wanted. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never accept that shirk, and the Prophet ﷺ knew this and would never accept and compromise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen, anything that compromised the integrity of the religion. He would not do it, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so this is the minhaj of the Salaf as-Salih, is that it's not about just getting numbers and compromising the da'wah in order to make the people feel good and to compromise the numbers and the da'wah, to get the numbers, but rather it is about keeping on the principles but being kind and gentle towards the people, because that is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah, Hasan al-Basri, rahmatullah alayhi, rahmatul wasi, explained this verse by saying They desire for you to compromise your religion so they could compromise their religion. So the Mudari is lenient in his dealings with the people without renouncing or compromising anything from his religion. But the Mudahin strives to get close to people by compromising his religion. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the most excellent character and was the most merciful of the ummah towards people, which exemplifies the point of gentleness and leniency being from his minhaj. So that shows us the minhaj of Ahl Sunnah, that we need to be gentle and kind with one another. This is why in contemporary times, our Shaykh Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abad, that he wrote his treatise, Rifqan, be gentle, Ahl Sunnah, with one another. That was the title of the treatise. Because he knew that there was an ailment, a sickness in the body of Ahl Sunnah. And that the people began to make tabdi' and tafsiq of one another very easily. And it became so quick and so easy for someone to declare another person an innovator. So he wrote that treatise to make, as a type of medicine, to call people back to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and have Ahl Sunnah to be gentle with one another. Because they need one another. They need to strengthen one another in order to represent the da'wah of Allah Azza wa Jal properly. And that it shows it's with kindness, with gentleness. And the Prophet ﷺ was the strongest and the most firm in upholding the religion of Allah, and he would not abandon or compromise anything from it, no matter who they were. And this exemplifies the point of holding tightly to the religion without compromise, and also nullifies the practice of mudahana. And mudahana, again, is compromise, to compromise principles of the deen. So, for example, if someone says, I just want the numbers of Ahl Sunnah to be greater, so then they sit with the biggest of the Mubtadi'ah, and then they, do things, and they have to compromise their da'wah in order to sit with those Mubtadi'ah. The Mubtadi'ah say, yes, you can come to our conference. Let's all give conferences together. I know we're Naqshbandi and you are Salafi. We know this. But we can come together, but we just don't want you to talk about Tawheed. Just talk about manners. And so then the Salafi says, yes, that's a good idea. I just want to have the numbers. I want to sit with you, and we will call together, and we just won't talk about this most important affair of Tawheed. This is a big mistake, and this is mudahana. This is compromising your deen, because the asl of the deen, the foundation of the religion, is based on Tawheedillah. So it's necessary for the student of knowledge to recognize and carefully consider the difference between these two affairs. For there are some people who may consider being lenient and gentle with people a sign of weakness in his deen, and a form of timir, that the person is mumayya. I know you've heard these terms, and this is what some of the people throw around like nothing. They say just because someone smiled, he's mumayya. This one, we saw him give salams to Ahl Bidah, he's mumayya. It's a travesty that people are so quick to try to expel one another from the da'wah of Ahl Sunnah, which is the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the da'wah to the book and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But some of the people are very quick to take you off the manhaj. On the other hand, there may be a group that considers being gentle and lenient with people to mean that you condone their batil, and that you are being silent concerning their mistakes. In all honesty, both of these paths are incorrect. So here the Sheikh is talking about both ways are incorrect. They're both a mistake. That you also don't want to be so gentle and so kind and with the people of innovation that you accept their innovation. So, for example, you go with a group of takfiris, and you just say, hey, man, we have a lot of differences. Let's just eat pizza together. And, I will be a part of your group and work with you. I don't agree with all of your takfiri principles, but hey, let's just not talk about takfir right now, my brother, and let's just go forward and do da'wah. This is also a mistake. because you know that their asl of their minhaj has some usul fasid. They have some methodological errors that divert people from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and call people to spilling the blood, making takfir, and destruction. So you do not want to participate with those people and be a part and forgiving of their errors in minhaj. So it's a very touchy area, and this is also that mudahana is also from the usul of Ikhwan Muslimin. It is from the usul of Ikhwan Muslimin, because Ikhwan Muslimin, one of the base principles of that organization, that Hassan al-Banna, he developed this principle, which is, let us unite on that which we agree upon, and let us be silent on that which we disagree upon. You know, let us forgive one another for the things we disagree upon. For him, it was all ijtihad. Ijtihad and aqeedah, ijtihad and fiqh, ijtihad and everything in the religion. Wa'iyadhan billah. وَهَذَا خَطَى فَاحِشْ. That is a very serious mistake in the minhaj, in the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It is a base core principle which distorts the methodology of the Salaf. And it distorts the da'wah ilallah azza wa jal. You cannot sit with anyone, you cannot sit with grave worshippers and call da'wah, and call that da'wah. Because then what is the difference between you sitting with the preacher and the minister and the rabbi then? If you're going to sit with kuburiyun, people who worship the graves, who say that it's okay to make tawassul bil mait, to seek to come near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the dead, by supplicating to them, by sacrificing on their graves, by putting your fruit on their graves, by dancing and making tawaf around their graves. How is it that you could sit with people like this and call that da'wah to Islam? Furthermore, how can that be considered da'wah to Tawheed wa Sunnah? Abadan. So this shows us that this is a dangerous minhaj, and that is the asl of Ikhwan Muslimin, as I said. I'm not making this up. And I can't see any, I was going to look for one of the books that really talks in detail about, but this is not a dars in Ikhwan Muslimin, but this is just to know that this is one of the major differences between us and them, aside from their political activism, is that they believe that it is a greater maslaha, a greater benefit to forgive one another, even in issues of aqeedah, and just unite under one umbrella. But it's not possible. It's not possible that you can go together with the takfiri jihadi groups who make takfir of you and make your blood lawful, and make the blood lawful of most of the Muslims, because they differ with them and they're not a part of their organization. Or that you could go to the grave worshippers, or you could go with those who worship the saints, or you could go with those who have all these other kind of mukhalafat, minhajiyya wa aqidiyya. It's not really possible, and it is not for the overall benefit of Islam, because in the end you will have a unity based on ignorance and without true substance to what you're supposed to unite upon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Kitab al-Kareem, وَاعْتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Kitab al-Kareem, hold on to you all steadfast to the rope of Allah, and do not divide. وَاعْتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. The Salaf explained the hablillah, ahabati fillah, as the rope of Allah as being the Quran. And the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also some of them said it was the Sunnah, and some of them said it was the Jama'ah. So it's all of those things really, because they don't ta'arud, they don't contradict one another. So holding on to the robe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means holding on to the book and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so if you unite on other than that, your unity will have no real substance, and you will see it crumble. And you will see it will be to the detriment of the ummah. Because if you unite with the Kuburiyun and unite with Ahl Takfir wa Hijrah, and you unite with the groups that call to jihad and under all circumstances without any of the conditions for jihad in Islam, and the ones who call to bloodshed, they will destroy and kill one another. They will make takfir of one another. And their unity will have no true basis. And this is what we've seen from history. And we've seen it in practicality, that it is impractical. And this is why you see all these pacts of batil. For example, the thing that Yasser Qadi and a bunch of other du'at in America, Hamza Yusuf and others, signed a pact many years ago. I think this must have been 10 years ago or more, that they would basically not refute one another, and they would, just work for common goals and all kind of other mumayya. That is mumayya. That is throwing away the principles of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And that is destructive to the ummah, no matter how much it feels good to just be Muslim and just say, hey, this one I think is a Muslim, hey, it's all good. That feels good to have that kumbaya and hold hands and arms. But, ahabati fillah, it's not what advances Islam forward. Because then people will think that the Rafid, the Shia, when they're beating their backs and bleeding and they're teaching their children to do this with their swords, and when they're cursing Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha, and then we're making takfir, when they're making takfir of Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala an, wa Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, that when they make this their aqidah, how is it that you can unite with people who curse your ummahat al-mu'mineen, the mothers of the believers? I can never sit and be comfortable with someone who curses Ummana Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, the mother of the believers, along with the other ummahat al-mu'mineen. Likewise, I couldn't feel comfortable sitting arm in arm with those people who make takfir of them, or sitting comfortable and arm in arm with those people who busy themselves with talking about the hukam, the governments of Islam, and making takfir of the leaders, and making takfir of one another, and calling people to khuruj, and calling the people to every kind of batil that exists. How is it that we can unite with that? It's not possible. So that is why it's imperative that we learn and we teach and we represent the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as the Salaf used to say, be from Ahl Sunnah even if you're by yourself. Be from the ummah. Be from the sunnah, the jama'ah, even if you are one. So it's imperative to stick to those principles, stick to the usul of Ahl Sunnah, and not compromise that important methodology. The Shaykh then goes on to mention the fifth point. He says, the da'i who engages in calling people to this religion has two legislative paths he can follow while doing so. And both are supported by evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah. He says, firstly, Maslak at-ta'lif wa targhib, the path of leniency and encouragement. That's an important characteristic of da'wah. A person who is calling you to Islam and calling you to the Sunnah you should not see that they make you afraid, or they make you uncomfortable, or they seem to emanate a type of animosity and arrogance and hatred. La abadan. It should be bil-aks. It should be the opposite, in that you feel comfortable with the people you take knowledge from, and that they call you and encourage you to do better. They open their arms to you. They supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. May Allah have mercy upon you and us. Ameen. And that it's a path of gentleness and leniency. So he said the second path. So these are characteristics that the da'i should have. He said, Maslak al-Hajr wa Tarheeb. The Maslak of Hajr wa Tarheeb, which means the path of boycotting and chasing people away. Now, does that make sense with what we just said? It would appear not to. However, it shows you that these, and that's why the Sheikh said in the beginning, he said that these are two mashru', these are two legislated ways. One is that you're gentle and you encourage people. The other is that, yes, there is hajr in the religion of Islam. It is a part of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it has qiyud. It has conditions and restrictions and limitations and mannerisms in what you should observe when you boycott someone. Because you boycott someone, maybe they're a wicked sinner. For example, if you know a brother or a sister, they respect you, but they always come around and they're high every time you see them. It can be legislated. I didn't say it's always legislated. I said it can be legislated, and this takes fiqh fi deen, to make hajr of that person. It can be that you should not even go around them anymore and say, Akhi, until you quit smoking weed, I can't be with you. I can't roll with you no more. You can't come over. I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to visit you until you stop smoking weed. That may, if he respects you, that may have an excellent impact, and it may change his behavior. So then it is mashru' in that situation, because you actually had a positive effect by making hajr of that individual. So that shows us that boycotting and chasing away at sometimes is mashru'. It is legislated in the religion of Islam. The Sheikh then, he begins to give us some details about this. He says the truth of the matter is that he is mistaken if he treads either path unconditionally with everyone. Instead, what is appropriate is for him to choose the path with everyone who opposes the truth that will most likely bring about his acceptance of the truth and secure his return to what is correct. So if ta'lif, leniency, is more beneficial for the one who is disobedient and more likely to bring about his reformation, then this is what is legislated. But if boycotting is better and more effective, then this is what is legislated. Alhamdulillah. So, Ahabati fillah, what do we learn? We learn, and that goes back to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Man yuridullahu bi khayran yufiqhu fi din. Whenever Allah wants good for a person, He gives them fiqh of the religion. Fiqh fi din, Ahabati fillah, gives you those principles and gives you that understanding and gives you some insight so you can choose when it is more appropriate to cut someone off and when it is more appropriate to be kind and gentle to someone. You may have a situation where one person is very very affected by you. This person is a drunkard, maybe, okay? Or this person is a mubtadi'ah, because this is also mashru' if the person is a mubtadi'ah, or is mashru' if the person is maybe a wicked sinner. So, the person who has fiqh fi deen will be able to look at the person and at the scenario and at his or her situation and manzil and all of those masail and determine whether there is a greater benefit in being around that person and being gentle with them, even though they're smoking weed, even though they're getting high and drunk, and still being gentle with them and calling them back. They will be able to determine if it's more effective that, or if it's more effective to just cut them off and that they might return back to good from that cutoff. Or at least it would have a positive effect. So again, it's weighing the harms and the benefits. That's why it's a thing of knowledge. It's not for everyone. We don't say all the layperson should be involved in making hajr of people and dealing with these issues and calling people mubtadi'ah and getting involved in these things. No, because it requires fiqh fi din. It requires some understanding of these principles, of when it's mashru' and when it's ghayr mashru', when it's permissible and when it's not permissible, when it's legislated, when it's not legislated, when it's going to be a greater harm and when it's going to be a greater benefit. This comes from knowledge. So that's why it's not for everyone to just start cutting people off just because you think they're a mubtadi'ah, or maybe they are a mubtadi'ah, or maybe they have some mistakes, maybe they have some bid'ah, some small things that they just don't know out of ignorance. So you have to have fiqh to know how to deal with those things. And that's why the Sheikh said it is not unrestricted that you deal, every scenario is not the same. For example, a lot of times people ask questions, Sheikh or brother or whatever, we have a situation, there's this mubtadi and he's like this. What should we do? Well, it's not a black and white scenario. So that's why you'll have to determine, and the one that you ask has to determine and have a good tasawwur, a good image and a good picture of your situation to be able to determine what is perhaps going to be the best situation with dealing with that individual. Just because someone's with Jama'at Tabligh, you're going to make hajr from them? No, that doesn't make sense under all scenarios, no. But rather, it may be better and it may have more maslahah to engage with that person, to show them, to give them dawah if you can, and if not, at least not to cut them off. Even if you don't go with khuruj with them and stuff like this. The point is you have to have hikmah, you have to have wisdom, you have to have some knowledge of these things. So if leniency is more beneficial for the one who's disobedient and more likely to bring about his reformation, this is what is legislated. And that's what we just said. So if he takes the path of ta'lim, the one who legislatively deserves to be boycotted, then he is considered to be negligent and remissful. So that's a mistake. If it is now really recommended that you cut someone off because they are really a harm to you in your religion, or they are really going to be affected in a positive way and come back to the sunnah, but you chose not to, then that's also a mistake. That's also a mistake. And whoever adopts the path of hajr with the one who deserves to be treated with kindness, then he is considered to be someone who is harsh, rigid, and chases people away. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said in this regard, this type of boycotting varies depending on the strength and effectiveness of the one employing the boycott, as well as their weakness and ineffectiveness in doing such. It also depends on their multitude or scarcity, meaning if they're a large body of people who can influence the people, or if they're just a few people who are on the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah. Without a doubt, the objective of boycotting is to reprimand and discipline the one being boycotted, and to keep the layman from following him. So if the benefit in this is preponderant and more likely to lessen the evil, then boycotting becomes recommended and admissible. However, if this is not the case, rather none is deterred from their disobedience, not the one being boycotted nor the other than him, but it only intensifies the evil coupled with the weakness and ineffective of the one employing the boycott to the extent that harm outweighs the benefit, then at this point boycotting is not recommended. Again, mabni ala musaleh wa mufasid. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah just mentioned many nuances to when you're making hajr. And that this mas'ala, like many of the masail in the religion, are built upon looking at the harms and the benefits. That you have to look, is there going to be a greater benefit of practicing this mas'ala, or is there going to be a greater harm being spread by practicing it? And likewise, by leaving it, is there going to be a greater harm or a greater benefit? So this takes looking at the masalih and the mafasid. The only way you can really look at the masalih and the mafasid is by studying, is by ilm, is by having knowledge and fiqh fi deen, having some sort of understanding of the religion and some of these principles in masail. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah also said, leniency is more beneficial and effective for some people than boycotting. And boycotting is more beneficial and effective for some people than leniency. Due to this, the Prophet ﷺ used to be lenient with some people and boycott others. Similarly, it is legislatively recommended to go to war with the enemy sometimes, and at other times to make a truce, and sometimes to take the jizya from them. All of this is dependent upon the circumstances and benefits in doing so, and the response of the Imams of Ahl Sunnah, like Imam Ahmed and others, in relation to this issue, which is founded upon this principle. So here Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is saying that the Salaf of this ummah, that they practice these masail, the mas'ala and the issue of hajr, and also being gentle at times, and they looked at the harms and the benefits, and great imams like Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, rahmatullah alayhi, rahmatin wasiya, wa ghayrihim kathir, that they that they used and looked at these principles, and they practiced these principles in order to appropriate practice these masail and these issues. And that is the i'tiqad and the minhaj, the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah regarding this issue. Sheikh Ibrahim then mentions, he begins to make a ta'liq on what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said. He says, Shaykh al-Islam then clarifies the mistake of the one who applies boycotting and leniency absolutely in every circumstance, situation, without consideration of the principle mentioned previously. So here he's going to mention what Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned regarding being absolute. And what you find with some of the groups of brothers and sisters who try to be on the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is that they are unrestrained in their application of these principles. So for example, you find some are always lean about everything. Every mistake, every bid'ah, they are almost embracing it. They don't ever refute. They don't ever reject. They don't ever even point out the mistakes. They're just lean. They're lean. They're always gentle in every circumstance. And that is a mistake. Then you have another group, as we said, every small mistake, everything, they rush and they race to declare a person an innovator very quickly. And they very quickly make hajr. If you don't leave them, we will turn our backs upon you. How many times have you heard this? We heard it recorded. It's so weird. It's the weirdest Mickey Mouse thing I ever heard in my life. I can't ever imagine any of our scholars. I never heard any of the scholars yelling in a dars or in a masjid, or even the students of knowledge in the places I've traveled. I didn't see it in Indonesia. I never saw it in Ethiopia. I never saw it in Yemen. I never saw it in Saudi, where they got up and they just chased people away and said, turn your backs on them, brothers. That's some weird, crazy stuff. And we've heard it recorded with our own ears that some of the people, they don't know anything about masalih wa mafasid abadan. And all they do is, if you disagree with them, they make tabdi of you. And if you disagree and are not down with them, they make hajr of you. And if you are seen with a tape of the person they disagree with, they will cut you off even for that, after a stern warning, maybe. So it shows that you have to know, you have to have fiqh fi deen, and you have to know that these principles are not black and white. And not every scenario is black and white. And you need to know how to deal with people who are on different levels and who have different levels of knowledge and have different scenarios, and you have to have fiqh in knowing how to deal with them. You know, should I be gentle with this person, Or is it better and it's going to have a better benefit by being kind of harsh and strong with them? Is that going to deter them from batil? Is that going to turn them away from falsehood? And so that takes fiqh fi din. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said in this regard, indeed, there are those who apply boycotting and leniency absolutely. They apply boycotting and reprimand at times in which they were commanded to do so. And because they didn't do what they were ordered to do, they didn't achieve the outcome they desired. Perhaps by applying hajr, boycotting, they have forfeited some of the wajibat, as well as the mustahabbat, meaning the obligatory duties and the recommended acts. Also by doing so, they have embarked upon some of the muharramat. Sometimes people are doing haram, forbidden acts, contrary to those who have abandoned boycotting altogether. For they don't boycott those whom they were commanded to from those who indulge in evil, innovative practices. So Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah here was clarifying that again, it needs fiqh. Some people make a mistake and they leave off wajibat. For example, it's mashru' and it's wajib that you return the salams to people. So some people, they make hajr so quickly that they fall into a bigger sin. They've cut their brother off. Their brother gives them salams and they refuse to give them salams. And the brother doesn't even know why they cut them off. It's only because they were ordered to by some mubtadi'ah or some hizbi who has ordered them to turn their backs on them. Has ordered them to cut them off. He's ordered them to boycott people. And he doesn't even have the knowledge or the right to order people to do anything. So this is a shameful practice. And because of that, some people fall into other muharramat because they're blind following someone else. They're following his orders. Captain Hajr says to them, make hijrah of them, turn your backs on them, brothers. If we see you go to their masjid, we're going to turn our backs on you. So then the youth are scared to even go to that masjid or even give salams to their own relatives who might be people who go to that masjid. And it causes fitna and fawda because there was no hikmah, there was no wisdom, and there was no fiqh and understanding, and there was no ilm. There was no real true ilm and nafiya and dealing with those issues. Instead, the people just operated based on their desires and practicing these major masail without any introspect, any understanding of those issues in the deen. Because these are deep issues, I think we're going to need to put it will have to be another sitting or two to finish this treatise. I will not be able to finish it right now. I think we'll stop there because it is, it's detailed and it's very important, and we shouldn't rush through some of these issues, even though I will try to go somewhat quickly through them, but we have to give them their rights to a greater or lesser extent. So that way everybody walks away understanding something from this lesson or these series of sittings. And we ask Allah the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So we'll look at the questions. I had some problems with it keeps saying rotate device. So I'm rotating it now. Let's see what happens. So a lot of comments. Can you turn the camera, please? Okay. So that was the problem. Yeah. The camera was my usual way, which is better, but I think the settings were wrong where it wouldn't accept the setting. But anyway, ala kulli hal. Some of the people are very difficult to pull them out of the way they're thinking, of course. So I don't really see any questions. I see a lot of comments. And I kind of prefer that we limit the comments so that way, if someone has a question, we can actually deal with the question instead of scrolling tons and tons of comments. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Khalid, you've been to a lot of countries, learn a lot of good things of people and see mistakes. Yes. many sittings because it's need now more than ever. Yeah, it's good to travel and to see from our brothers and sisters. We learn from one another, and traveling is so enlightening. And I love just showing up at a masjid in a place, like in a village somewhere. Like of course, in Ethiopia especially, I've traveled probably more extensively than any other place. I went to Indonesia one time, and went to Surabaya and went to Jakarta, and it was a whole different vibe, and seeing the going to the masajid there. I like going to just humble masajid in places like in villages. You go to a village, and it may be similar to my shipping container, similar to my office here. Not even as nearly as elaborate as this. Literally just a tin roof with the sides are made from reeds or something, and it's a dirt floor, or you just it's just a good feeling in some of those masajid, and just going to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or even where there's hyenas in the area, And I remember once we were doing some dawah together, and they were translating. I was actually doing a lecture in a place called Butajira, and it's in the Oromia region in Ethiopia. And so me and some other students of knowledge, they were going to some other masajid. We split up. One went with me to translate, and the others, they went to like another village or some other masajid around. And so we split up, and we just hit different places, alhamdulillah. And, mashallah, it was packed, actually. It was a lot of people. Actually, that day, I think I spoke at a couple places. We spoke at an Oromo community center kind of thing, or dawah center. And it had some new Muslims that were Oromo that also had, some of them were like priests. And one of the du'at, I'll never forget, may Allah bless him. Him and his wife, they were big, he was a big priest or something, or minister. And then he embraced Islam. And so I think it was in that village, because he was so popular, or it could have been actually in Addis Ababa that it happened. But anyway, they imprisoned him because he was so popular. Like, no, you can't, you embrace your religion. When he got out of prison, he went to Yemen, and I think he went to Damaj and studied there for a while. So I met him, after he had come back from Damaj. MashaAllah, he was a very strong sheikh, and really benefiting the people and doing da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you meet those kind of people when you travel, people who sacrificed, and people who are calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, I have some very good contacts from Ahl Sunnah there in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. Markaz Ibn Mas'ud. I love them very much, and still occasionally we'll have some contact with some of the mashayikh there. And also Madrasa to Sumaya, which is also a place where they teach the i'tiqad of Ahl Sunnah with Ustad Tamam Nuruddin, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, wa ghayrihim kathir. So it's good to have that ta'awun with Ahl Sunnah. And when you travel, you get to meet people from all over, from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, who are calling to the book and the Sunnah, and establish relations and so forth. And it's a very beautiful thing. What else are the Jews left with, rejecting the final message mentioned in their own scripture? What do the Shiites slander Aisha? Yes. Why do they slander Aisha and Abu Bakr? Those are big issues, and I think you probably need to really kind of do some research as far as why, and getting into the history a bit of why those Shia that curse them, and those are usually the Rafida, known as the rejectors, that they believe, and the 12 imamers, if you will, those who believe in 12 imams, and that they have infallibility and so on and so forth. But they have a whole creed, and they have their own books. Like we have Bukhari and Muslim, they have their own books and text in which they have so many fabricated narrations. And they believe that the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala ajma'in cheated the messenger, cheated the message, and that they changed the Quran, and that they sinners and oppressors, and they make takfir of some of them, and they consider some of them just to be wicked, evil sinners, and all kind of innovated and evil beliefs that even the Jews and the Christians don't hold about the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala, and all kinds of shirkiyat in their practices, and many reasons to make takfir of them. And this is, of course, not all of the Shia. So you have to know that they are also nuanced, that they are also various sects themselves. We're talking about the most extreme of them from the Rafida. For example, I was just giving a story about when I used to pray sometimes in Sana'a in Yemen, and I would end up in some of the masjid because, especially when you didn't know which masajid were Shia, but most of the Shia there were Shia, were Zayya. So they would have bid'ah in their adhan, and they would have bid'ah. I used to get in a lot of arguments. A lot of old Yemeni men would be very upset and angry with me. I'd come in the masjid and I'd have khuffain. I might be wearing leather khufs. And because I wiped over my khufs and would walk in the masjid, the Shia don't believe. I think almost all the Shia sects reject wearing khuffain and wiping over the socks. So they would be so upset. It would be before the adhan. I would have all these old Yemeni men gathering around me, yelling at me, screaming at me. And my Arabic was very limited at that time. So I would say to them, I can always remember that I'd say, Ma ta'rif sunnah, Ma ta'rif sunnah. That's all I could say to them. So I'd be yelling back at them saying, you don't know the sunnah? You don't know the sunnah? And I'd be wearing my leather hoofs and I wouldn't take them off, and then I'd go and pray. And boy, people would just look at me, the whole masjid, and people would be upset, and I would pray and then leave. And likewise, they had a lot of filthy practices, and it's from ignorance. For example, in front of all the wudu stations. So you come in, they don't wear shoes in the wudu station. So they would have water pools. You would walk through a pool of water, and you'd have to take off your socks and your shoes to go to the bathrooms and go to make wudu. So that means you have all of these old, all of these people who don't take foot care seriously, open sores, and a pool of water that who knows if it's ever been changed. Everybody is walking through it. It is a collection. It's a brown pool like a moat. You have to, if you want to go to the bathroom and you want to make wudu, you have to go through it. So you have people going to the bathroom, coming out of the bathroom, and going through this pool. You have people going to the bathroom who have to go through this pool. There's no way to escape it. And it is brown. The water is brown from so many feet going through there. Dirty feet coming out of the desert and out of the city, wearing sandals, and people with sores on their feet, and it was just disgusting. But that was their ignorance and what it led to. And it was a part of their aqidah as well, that you cannot wipe over the socks. So a lot of those masajid, that was just the case in the scenario that you would deal with. So those are some of the things that you run into when you travel. But those were some beautiful times as well. And so many beautiful people, and so many people from Ahl Sunnah and other than Ahl Sunnah that you meet, and that forms a part of your own life history, and which was absolutely amazing. Subhanallah. Yes, Muslims by saying you have done about the takfiris and that issue. You should visit some Salafi scholars there, and doubt is widespread. That's what I hear about Somaliland, and I have many friends there and close people there, very close people there. And so I will one day, I will come to Somaliland. And inshallah ta'ala, I've heard many good things. And I know mashayikh that are in Seattle from there that actually go back and forth all the time. And inshallah, I hope in the future too, as long as I feel it's safe and stable, I absolutely have to. So yeah, inshallah ta'ala, I hope so. Is there Salafi masajid in Seattle? Barakallah feek. MashaAllah. In Seattle, alhamdulillah, we have several masajid that I would say in general they're on the sunnah. They have a lot of khair and a lot of talabat al-ilm from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. As far as if you want to label it as a Salafi masjid, those are kind of if what you mean by that, if you expect something like you have in Philly and some of those communities in New Jersey and some of the other communities where these are staunch communities that are really connected with Salafi scholars and stuff, well, we don't really have necessarily like that, but rather we have more that masajid that have Iqbal of the Sunnah, that have a lot of students of knowledge. We got many graduates in Seattle, so many Islamiyah. I don't know many from Al-Qura, but most of the brothers, I know so many. I can think of we probably have 10 or more that at least if they haven't graduated, you've got a lot. You got Sheikh Abdul Bari, who's with Maghribi Institute. He does a lot of dawah internationally. You've got so many mashayikh there that are doing so many good things. So that's what I would say about Seattle, is there's a lot of Iqbal of the Sunnah, and that, alhamdulillah, Ahl Sunnah is strong, and that you can go and do dawah there, and there's no opposition from the masajid in general that, that are inclined toward the Sunnah. They will let you do khutbahs and lectures, and so it's really open. So I hope when this COVID-19 kind of the situation is calmed down, that we'll have more opportunities to have musharaka and sharing and ta'awun with our brothers, inshallah ta'ala. How do we support our African American brothers in the U.S.? With dua. Really with dua, and not being prejudiced to your brothers. That's really the best, because we have to support one another, regardless of whether we're supporting our Bengali brothers in the UK, our Pakistani brothers in Birmingham, or our Palestinian brothers in Abqaiq. That we that it's really not about any particular race of people, but I think the most important way that we support one another is trying to educate our youth to not be ignorant to the stereotypes, to the racism, to rise above it, to unite based on the book and the Sunnah, not based on our nationalities and our tribalism. So I think that as African Americans, that we have a special role to uplift our communities as everyone else uplifts their community. So there's no doubt that the duty falls on us, that we have a lot of work to do, and I hope to be sharing that and doing that with our brothers in Seattle, and having ta'awun in Washington State, beginning there and then wherever else that Allah that our Salafi brothers bring close to those who are far from them, and they distance those who are close to them. I've seen it too many times. I don't know. I really couldn't answer that question. You'd have to talk to the people who are practicing that. Is there a Salafi masjid in North Carolina? Of course there is. I think it's in North Carolina. I am an old friend of mine. We were in Damaj together. He is an imam in Masjid Tawheed. I think it's either in North Carolina or South Carolina. He's in Durham, I think. And so you have Masjid Tawheed. I think it's called Masjid Tawheed or Masjid Tawheed wa Sunnah. And then there's a lot of other brothers I've been networking with more recently, that are brothers that I know they're coming out of the Carolinas. So I'm sure there is. I'm just not all that versed about what's going on, unfortunately, in the States, all the masajid and so forth. I haven't really, it's like being new in the States again. There are some very good European Americans supporting against the supremacist dictator Donald Trump. Yeah, of course, there's all kind of people going against, but it's greater than him. His minhaj is a methodology of people who prop him up, who support him, who support supremacist ideologies and ideas. And so it's bigger than that. So it's a very dangerous thing. It's a very disturbing thing. You have major news outlets like Fox News and others who are vigilant in supporting supremacist ideas and ideologies, and trying to even back it up with what they believe is knowledge, and believe what they believe is fact based, which is not. Most of it is biased and biased studies, and it's just real shameful. It's a shameful world we live in. But I think, again, we have to ourselves by worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts He lifts up whomsoever He pleases, and He humiliates to lift ourselves up by Tawheedillah, by uniting based on the book and the Sunnah, by offering our brothers and sisters who have difficulty, by raising them up. You raise them up by knowledge. You raise them up if you have financial ability to. You raise them up by showing them the avenues on how to get skills and how to uplift themselves and uplift their communities. So those are just some of the... What skills would you recommend for Muslim youth to gain besides ilm? I would advise, and that's an excellent question, I would advise probably IT-related skills, because you can do so much. That is the trend right now, and that gives you a lot of independence, and it can give you a lot of wealth. I know a lot of IT people, some of our that are Muslims, and they live very well. They have wealth, so they can spend in the cause of Allah easily. They have comfortable lives for them and their families, and they are... and they have freedom. They can work remotely, work in their homes. So if someone like that is a person of ta'atillah, if they're a person who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means they have the freedom to go to the masjid 5 times a day if they're religious and they choose to do so, and they're earning their living by being at home, watching their children grow up, and they have the wealth to be able to spend in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They can make hajj and umrah, they can pay for others, they can help the poor and the fuqara, they can help Islamic causes, they can help build wells, they can do so many good things because they have wealth. So I would advise you to be independent. I would advise you to try to get business skills, to learn, put your ideas on paper and build and go forward and get independence and, build yourself. Build yourself. This is the time to build yourself. Right now, you can do so many free courses on the internet, and so many free courses and learn skills to better yourself and to earn a decent living and to be free. For example, my own situation, walillah alhamd. I've been able to purchase land, alhamdulillah, with giant rabbits on it and rattlesnakes as well. But, that gives me at least a base to operate. Even if I don't live out here all the time, now I have a place where my books are set up, where I can come and have quiet time. If I want to get away, come, for a week, come for a month and record and produce material for Athlete Institute. I can do, and that only comes by either saving up some money, or if you have the kind of jobs and things and opportunities, that give you freedom, or you're a business person and that gives you freedom. And so even myself, I'm looking for ways, but I very much encourage the youth, because you're starting out on your path, is that you gain the skills. For sisters, there's no reason you can't get educated. You can get educated for free at home. There's so many courses on Udemy. So many courses that are free. There's courses that are paid for. There are courses that even pay you to study. So I would advise our youth, the youth of Ahl Sunnah, should not be poor. Why are the youth of Ahl Sunnah only thinking that they can be poor and have one thobe? No. And when you travel, you will see people from Ahl Sunnah that are bosses. We call them bosses, meaning they have big money. They have wives and they have wealth. They own things and they support the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah. What's better than that? That's beautiful. To be able to have the resources, to have the wealth, to have the opportunity to go forward And that comes from taking opportunity. Even the scholars, for example, a lot of those scholars that you hear of, some of us that used to teach in Medina, we used to have them. I used to teach Sheikh Rabi's, one of his grandsons, Sheikh Salih Suhaimi, one of his sons. Many scholars, we would teach their sons. Some of the scholars would even want private lessons from some of the brothers to teach their sons English or to teach their sons, because they're concerned, they want their children to get ahead too. So don't think that the dawah is about being lazy or it's about being poor. If you're poor, okay, but don't be lazy. Try to uplift yourself, because poverty is no fun. Poverty doesn't usually give you a lot of opportunities. If you're poor and content, alhamdulillah, hada ni'mah min ni'amillah. But if you're poor and you're struggling and you can't do anything that you want to do, you can't seek knowledge, you can't buy a vehicle, you can't get married because you can't afford it, you can't. Well, then that's not something, a position that any of us want to be. And so I advise the youth to gain the skills, use the opportunity. Just the fact that you're listening to this, where you could be playing Bob G or one of those games. You could be playing video games and PlayStation and all the other things, wasting your time during the COVID. But you have some desire to better yourself, and you're sitting in for a long hour listening to me talk. And that can't be the funnest thing to do. So my advice, since you have the rughbah, is to seek Islamic knowledge and seek the knowledge that's going to get you freedom. Economic freedom is so important and so beneficial and so beautiful to be able to do the things that you want to do and support what you want to support. Purchase a hadith, book of hadith by Sheikh who studied both Azhar and Deobandi, named Khalid Mahmoud, and he himself is a Deobandi. Seems to have useful information, but is it permissible to take from? I would say you have the book. I would say if you have knowledge of what is batil, I'm not going to say just burn your book, no. But if the hadith are authentic hadith and there's benefit in the book, then yes, you could benefit from it, but it's better to benefit from the books of Ahl Sunnah, because maybe you will find just one statement that sticks with you that is a bid'ah, that is going against the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ or the I'tiqad of Ahl Sunnah, and it could be a source of deviation for you. So that's why we don't encourage anyone to buy the books and get the books of the people of innovation. No. I'm from the UK, and my plan is to move to Canada. Do you know which city our brothers from Ahl Sunnah? I'm sure you can find them all over. Toronto is a huge city, is well known. Many Salafis there. Many communities all over the of Canada. So I really, again, I'm like new to the West myself, so I really don't know a lot of the places, unfortunately. Yeah, alhamdulillah, it is a beautiful place here. Alhamdulillah. A lot of people are poor and they get married. Allah provides. All make us the most of what you have got. Yes, of course. So yes, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides, but there's a lot of pain in poverty. And I think it was Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala an, one of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, said that poverty buridul kufr, that poverty, being poor, is a means to disbelief. Because people who are poor, and this is just a generalization, of course, because there's many poor, content, righteous people and whole countries. Look at Yemen. Yemen has so many. But if you also look at the people who are ignorant and poor, you'll find a lot of problems as well, and a lot of shirkiyat and a lot of bid'ah. But the point is, when you're poor, that and it also depends on what you mean by poor. But poor can make it difficult to provide for your family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ar-Razzaq, and He provides and sustains. However, poverty is real. And poverty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created all things, and it's a part of His decree. but it doesn't mean that it's easy, and it doesn't mean that it's something you want for yourself. I don't want poverty. Actually, I would prefer to have wealth. If Allah favored me to be a millionaire, I would gladly accept it and take the responsibility and strive in His cause. I hope. That is my intent. But I do not have any desire to be poor, because poverty doesn't allow you to it limits you in so many ways, and we all know that. Can you teach Tawheed? What does it mean? Can you teach Tawheed? Yes, we can teach Tawheed. I guess you're asking in general, in a quick nutshell, what does Tawheed mean? Tawheed, it means, one of the definitions you could say, Ifrad Allah bi ibadi. So it means to worship Allah alone without any associating any partners with Him. And that's a general statement, and that's kind of a definition of Tawheed al-Ibadah, or Tawheed al-Uluhiyah, mean the Tawheed of the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Because Tawheed, as the scholars of Ahl Sunnah in contemporary times, categories Tawheed in three categories. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, which refers to the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, which refers to worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, without any partners. All worship belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Tawheed al-Asma'i wa Sifat, meaning Allah tabarak wa ta'ala's divine names and attributes, like He is Ar-Rahman, He is Al-Khaliq, He's the creator, He's the sustainer, He is the provider, He is Ar-Razak, He provides for us, and his divine names and attributes. He is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. So that quickly, I guess, could be what Tawheed is. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were asking. Did you study master or PhD in firqas? I forget. Firqas. What is firqas? I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. But anyway, I did my master's and my PhD through the University of South Africa, which of course is a secular institution, but I benefited tremendously because I didn't have to take courses. I did research. So that means I did a dissertation. I did my PhD thesis, and I did it about takfir in the Khawarij. That was my master's. And my PhD was kind of an extension of that. And it was about the Salafis, Salafi scholars' effectiveness in refuting groups like ISIS and extremism. So those were topics that I chose, that I benefited from, and also someone who mentored me, who I benefited from tremendously from his own work. And my work coincided with some of his work, and hopefully in the future we will be doing some collaboration. And that is Dr. Abdul Haq Baker, who's also from the UK, from Brixton, but he lives in Saudi. So we will be, idhnillah ta'ala, doing some cooperation in the future. We just, I'm just trying to get myself together and get settled. Would you recommend that if I am 17 to study IT before applying to Medina, or Medina then IT? I would say to see if you can get in there first, because keep applying. Do both. So start your IT program maybe, or because you're going to be waiting to get that acceptance from Medina, so you might as well be doing work at the same time. So I would advise doing both. I wouldn't advise waiting. But a ni'mah, if you got accepted into one of those Islamic universities and programs and study Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen, that will give you a whole different insight in how to practice your religion and how to help others. And on top of that, you can always come back and do your IT and do your other work. So I would advise putting my energy into that first, if you have the opportunity, and getting accepted. And then from there, you can launch your other path and determine what you want to do as far as IT. And you can always brush up on those skills, because those skills are also invaluable. Even for me doing Athletic Institute, I'm going to need IT. And I've, alhamdulillah, had a couple of brothers who've reached out to me to help. And inshallah ta'ala, when I get to that stage, we'll be, I'll be able to use their skills, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. I remember your reply to Ahbash. That video is classic. We look after each other and give charity to widows and orphans. Is it okay to take knowledge from Sheikh Bilal Phillips? Bilal Phillips has so many beneficial books that all of us from my generation, no doubt, benefited from his works immensely. That his books taught us Tawheed. That does not mean that there are not some issues, especially as even Abu Khadija had pointed out, I think in his Tawheed, his book on Tawheed, that there were a few issues in there, just some statements that he needed to clean up. But, however, with that being said, I don't know what the Sheikh is doing these days. I know he has his online university. I can't say anything negative or bad about him. That, he is an elder that should be respected, that has knowledge and has done tremendous for the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah. And may Allah forgive him of his shortcomings, but and bless him to continue to serve the Muslims everywhere. That he has been a face that has been a more acceptable face in more mainstream Muslims for Ahl Sunnah. So this is a very good thing. That does not mean we endorse everything that he says or every person that he works with or whatever. But however, we have to be just and truthful. And I have, especially, in the past, in our youthful phase, we benefited tremendously from his books. And even for my masters, I used his chart and quoted from extensively. Yeah. Why do you refute Mufti Munir? Is he not Salafi? And if yes, what is the exact points for your refutation towards him? Thank you. I don't refute Mufti Munir. Why would I refute Mufti Munir? So I don't know what you're talking about. If you've seen any videos of mine, I've actually praised him. And from what I've seen, and I praised him based on truth, not based on hizbiyah or blind partisanship or because he's part of my crew or my clique, never. But because I see good from him and that he's spreading good and he has knowledge and so much to offer. So no, you will not find any refutations of Muhammad Munir. And on top of that, I would hope that if I had some issues or questions that I could go to him directly, I hope, and that he would accept or we would benefit from each other, although he has much more knowledge than I do. But we still can remind each other of Allah Azza wa Jal. But as far as refutation, no, there doesn't exist one. Can people come to your place and seek knowledge? How does it work? So Al-Athari is going to be online, but I hope in the future to actually make this a place where people could actually come and get away and we could study. We could actually do little Dorat once it's, once we've got things built and it's, safety is also always a concern, that everything is safe and together, and that's always open. That's even a possibility that we could actually physically, and I've been talking about that with one of my neighbors, that, maybe having some youth programs where we have youth come for like a summer program in the week, or come for like a week or 2 weeks out here. We teach them some things about camping. We have Dorat in the youth, and we also teach them how to shoot bows and arrows or something. I don't know if we won't do gun shooting, but we would do the things that are safe and that we can do legally and safely for the youth. Teach them some farming things, how to milk a cow, maybe, who knows. But those are things in the future, no doubt. I would like to do that in the future, yes. So I'm very open to that. And even having du'at come out here, I'm even open to that. If Muhammad Munir wants to come out, so if anybody can extend that invitation to him, or any other du'at come out, and if they want to record in here once I get my internet and they want to do their own thing, or we do something collectively, or we camp and I take them hiking or whatever. We can do a lot of things. So that's the point, is when you have something, when you are blessed to be able to get something, even if it's land that has a few rattlesnakes, only a few. I only saw one and I shot him. Then, you know, it's a ni'mah. It is a ni'mah. It's still a base. It's a base of operations, and I can invite others, and for sure my companions, as some of my ashab have come here before, and they will be coming back in the future, inshallah, and they'll hopefully be a bit more together then and ready to host. What's a modesty? This study, refutation, why do you refute? Can people come? Assalamu alaikum. May I ask you, Akhi, you receive a lot of questions about sexual matter. Where's the modesty from our people? First, that's an excellent question. For one, if they don't ask, where are they going to go? So, Imrat Abi Talha, she came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and she said, Ya Rasulullah, Inna Allah la yastahi min al-haq. So she came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, verily, Allah is not shy about the truth. And then she asked a very deep question. She said, Hal ala al-mar'a al-ghusl idha hiya ihtalamat? Should a woman make ghusl if she sees water, if she has orgasm? That's sexual. That's sexual. That's a wet dream. That's human. That's a part of our nature. So there's no problem with that. I have no problem if people ask questions and they feel comfortable, and it's something we won't make public. Some people ask me deep questions, but it doesn't get put out there because it's something that they want private and want a personal answer, and it's just done by email. But if it's something that they allow, and of course the individuals are never named or never shamed or never alluded to, then and others can benefit, then there's no problem. Because if you don't ask people you trust in knowledge, then where are you going to get the information from? Are you going to go to Ahl Bid'ah? Are you going to go to Ahl Kufr? Are you going to go to Ahl Shirk? So no, there should be no shyness in that. You know, I would say no one has really asked me anything I would say shameful. I've never had, and I know some of the brothers used to get asked deep questions about oral sex and about this and about that and deep questions. But I can say most of the people have been respectful and have asked for legitimate questions that they need to have dealt with and that they need answers about, that might have to do with their own, those are real issues. If a woman, she needs to know about the hukum. Do I need to make wudu for every salat if I have constant moisture dripping, akramakum Allah? Or, someone else who has urination or gas all the time, akramakum Allah. So those are real questions. There's no problem with that. There's no problem as long as people are respectful towards themselves. So I have no problem. It's okay. We shouldn't be shy from the truth, as someone commented, and this is not a blast on you, but this is even from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Sahaba, they wanted to know, they had to ask. Look at the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala. He said he came and he said kuntu rajulan midha'in فاستحييت أن أسأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لمكان ابنته مني فأمرت المقداد بن أسود. So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala, he was shy to go to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he was a person who used to have frequent premature ejaculation. This is what Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala informed us in the hadith. And so he was shy. He didn't want to say that to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he went to Miqdad ibn Aswad and he said to him, can you ask him? And the reason was because his position with his daughter, with Fatima radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So, how do you say to the father, hey, I have this problem? You're shy, especially when it comes to his daughter and anything that's sexual. So Ali ibn Abi Talib went to him, Miqdad ibn Aswad, and he asked him to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about this. And he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him the hukum: wash your penis. Akramakum Allah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this: wash your penis every time you're going to when you have this, and then make wudu. Then make wudu. So this is for premature ejaculation. This is for what is known as al-midhi, which is versus al-mini. Mini is pure ejaculation, akramakumullah, when a person has, sexual, they've ejaculated totally, from sexual excitement, either through sexual intercourse or from thinking about it or whatever the case may be, or masturbation, akramakumullah, or any of those things. Those are things we need to know. Our youth need to know, because those are things that they face, and so we shouldn't be shy about those things. We shouldn't be shy about them, but we should be respectful. We shouldn't be brazen and just talking crazy and stuff like this, but we should, be respectful and deal with those issues. People need to know. And if you don't get it from the people that you trust in knowledge, then where are you going to get it from? You making tibdiyah with that question? Assume is Hezbollah. I don't know anybody's Hezb. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Horse riding and maybe greyhound hunting is Islamic? Yes. Yeah. And this is why you stress the importance of wealth to achieve this. I'm not sure to achieve what. I'm not making the tibdiyah. So anyway, the people... who is the best mufassir of our time? You mean the mufassir for the Quran, I guess. Allah knows best. I don't know. I just have many of the tafsir, and I like some of the tafsir of the Salaf, and like tafsir, you need to have in your maktaba tafsir ibn Kathir, tafsir Qurtubi, tafsir Tabari, Ibn Ashur. There's many tafsir anyway, but I like, as far as contemporary, because of its ease, and its ease for the context of the time and for dealing with the people that we deal with, I like Imam Sa'di's, and now that's translated completely in English, and I highly suggest you get it. Is there a rough estimate, and that's an excellent question, of when Athari is going to be up and running? Well, I'll just tell you the progress, because it's hard to know. It's hard to really set a date, but so far, anyway, alhamdulillah, I've been recording. Today I didn't record. I wanted to today, but I did actually go out and take a quick hike just to clear my head and stuff like this. I'm going to do some recording tonight. I'm getting closer to finishing the first 2 levels. I want it to be about 4 levels, and I want to have probably about 3 levels finished before I even try to launch a website and stuff like that, because I don't want it half baked. So right now the issue is having time to be able to sit and record material, because that's what I have to do. I'm recording the material. So I really can't say quite yet, but inshallah ta'ala, we're on a path, a positive path, and we're seeing some progress. You stress the importance of wealth to achieve a physical institute to ultimately spread the dawah. Yes, physical wealth can help you do much good. You can build wells, you can do dawah, you can do... So what? Of course, wealth allows you to have free time. When you have wealth, you can purchase your time back. When you're tied to someone else's job, say if I had to go work at Amazon or just a basic job, for example, because now I'm restarting my life. I left Saudi Arabia. I'm not working. I'm outside of where I used to be, So if I'm working 8 hours at Amazon, and maybe in a place like Seattle, the wages and the cost of living is so high, you have to almost have 2 incomes just to survive and to pay rents. Rents are outrageously expensive. So you spend all of your time and you become tired. So when do you have time to do da'wah ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So if you're not in a position where you're an imam, or you're in some sort of da'wah, or you're independent and you have wealth, or you have a business where you can devote your time to projects like Al-Athari or whatever you're trying to do, then the time and the energy is zapped from you. Most people, they're working 9 to 5s. Most of the du'at that you like to listen to alhamdulillah, they are imams and they are in position. So that means their life revolves around that. But some people don't. They do this in their spare time, like myself. I had to teach. I was teaching English in Saudi Arabia for many years, teaching in the university, teaching in the Aramco, in Saudi Aramco, the oil company, and other things. And this was my livelihood. So I had to teach. And then in my free time, I developed Al-Athari and I did YouTube videos and did dawah. But, you know, and my PhD and my master's thesis, all that was in my spare time. So it's about time management, but it's not very easy. If you have to be in the rat race, you can only devote so much time. So for me, I'm hoping that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up an opportunity where I can focus my energy in the dawah and be the best that I can and get into my books and go forward instead of being a part-time da'i, just here and there on the weekend and, having to work a 9 to 5 or greater than that. That tires you out, where you're commuting, where you have no time, and it zaps you away from da'wah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens it up, and we're always looking for opportunities to do good. Bi-idhnillah. How to Arif Muhammad bin Hizam, Sheikh Muhammad bin Hizam. I have downloaded some of his books, and I think he's a Yemeni scholar who I don't know a lot about him. I think he may have been a scholar in Damaj, and if he's the one, that I think he has some excellent books that I have. For example, an explanation of Bulugh al-Maram, in which it's very fiqh muqarrana, it's comparative fiqh. It is an excellent resource, and I've used it. I haven't used it in a while, but it's very, very beautiful. So those are some of the best jewels that I found that came out of Damaj and stuff like this, was that, and also an explanation of Umdat Ahkam, I think it is. But anyway, I'm familiar with him a little bit, and I've downloaded some of his books. From what's apparent, the brothers have refuted him and he is to be avoided. I'm not sure who you're talking about. Nasia Sessions video on the Yasser Qadi, who is Muhammad Hizam, Sheikh Muhammad Hizam. I listened to him pretty much. Okay, so you guys are having an interesting conversation, so I don't see really any questions. People at SPUB refute the upcoming scholars of Kuwait is the fair refutation because I'm not aware of their works. People such as Faisal Jassim. Yeah, I really wouldn't take that too much. That's kind of, I would take that with a grain of salt, because you just said people at SPUB refute the upcoming scholars of Kuwait. Now, how is it that you would take from some students of knowledge, wherever, I don't care if it's SPUBs, Medina.com, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's me, who is nothing, but you're going to take from students of knowledge who are refuting scholars? Does that really, I don't know. I don't even know how to approach that. Because someone should not ever fall into that sick trap of allowing students of knowledge, some of them maybe not even students of knowledge, some of them maybe tuwailab al-ilm, and then they have the nerve to bark at scholars. Kuwait has so many beneficial scholars, and I benefit a little bit from Sheikh Jassim. I have some of his works. I'm not that familiar with him, but I know he goes to the UK, and I've heard only good things about him. And I know they can't be talking about Sheikh Abu Salah al-Afghani or others, but they probably, unfortunately. So my advice to the youth in general is listen to the scholars. Don't listen to small students and stuff like this, and people just because they're famous, and that dawah's got to be replaced. Go back to the ulama sunnah. Go back to the ulama Ahl Sunnah. Forget what the tawalib, what the small students and others are saying. And I don't care even if they're big students. But if they're talking about the ulama sunnah in Kuwait, then, they deserve to be spanked. Sat over someone's knee and just spanked like a little child. So don't listen to the garbage. Yeah. There's a lot, if you want information about Yasser Qadi, there's a lot of information out there. If someone chooses to listen to Yasir Qadhi, that's between them and their Lord. Again, we've said what we've said, and about Dr. Qadhi, and a lot of his issues and mistakes are well known, and his new methodology is becoming more and more apparent. But I would say, in a general sense of why not to listen to him, is you've seen him change and change and change. And change is not a methodology. And if you're talking about the methodology based on the book and the Sunnah, and that is not a thing really of change. That is going back to the asl, to the text and the master of the religion, the book and the Sunnah, and the method of the Salaf. And this is what we don't see from Dr. Qadhi. And I would advise you yourself, even listen to his lectures, and you tell me what you hear. Tell me if you hear him referring to the classical scholars, and if that is what he is, with all his newly invented interpretations and things that are going on, if that what you see from him. Be careful. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us in him. Ameen. This will be the last question. If a wife asks for a divorce and her husband said okay, and the wife wants him back, what should they do? Well, this is so common, and the scholars mention all the time, why are you guys playing with marriage? So, in general, again, that depends on several things. Is it the first talaq? Is it the first divorce? Is it the second divorce? Is it the third divorce, which is talaq al-ba'in, which means it's the irrevocable? If it is the third divorce, you cannot get married again. You are totally separate from one another, and you guys lost that. If it was the first divorce, then you can come back together if she was in her iddah. And if her iddah was finished, you guys can remarry again. No problem. But if, it was an irrevocable divorce, and now he wants her back, you can't marry again. You guys are finished, and she can marry someone else. And if she married someone else, and it was a legitimate marriage, and they had the intention to be together, and it didn't work out, and then she got divorced, and her iddah was finished, then she would be halal for her first husband to marry her again. So those are just a little bit about some of that stuff. Yeah. So again, I would just say, I wouldn't get too caught up in who listens to Yasir Qadhi and who listens to who. The main thing is if you listen and you're trying to benefit and study the book and the Sunnah, and those people who call you to that and call you to the methodology of the Salaf of this Ummah, and if you are listening to someone who has some deviance, then you should do your best to avoid that and leave that off. And if you don't know why they're deviant, then you can investigate that. And there's plenty of refutations on Yasir Qadhi, so you can investigate. And some of the brothers at salafimanhaj.com have also done some detailed refutations that are very beneficial of Dr. Qadhi and other than so that's what I would say. Sheikh Tahir many times, Wyatt, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him. May Allah forgive us and guide us all. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.